Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a nice 8-game Major League Baseball slate for you. Before I get started, you guys smash that like and subscribe button. Let's look at the weather first. It looks like doesn't look like any of these games are going to have any weather concerns. The early slate will have some concerns, so that is something to consider if you play the early slate, but we won't be going over that one here. So let's go ahead and get into this slate. So we have a pretty interesting slate with pitching and bats. I think it's going to be a high scoring slate. Uh, Not the most perfect slate we've ever had, but it's definitely a decent one. I do expect some home runs in this one, though we do have some pitchers that really don't give up many. So let's go ahead and look at our pitchers first. So we'll start at the top here with Schwellenbach. Now, he's a GPP play today. He's had 6 straight games over 17 fantasy points. He doesn't have the highest of ceilings. His K rate is a little bit underwhelming for his price point, but he's got a good matchup with the Angels, who will likely struggle against him today. So I think he's in a solid spot. He's going to be relatively high owned as well, which will give him some extra security. Though he won't be the highest owned player, that would be Corbin Burnes for Baltimore. Now he's an extreme GPP play today. He's very close to being a GPP play, but his matchup against Boston is tough. However, he has had 2 really good games against Boston this season. That does give him some potential today, but as such, he'll be a high-owned player, and he's a good strikeout guy, so he's going to have a lot of potential today, but I do like a couple Boston bats in this game, and so I don't think he's a must play, but I do think he's somebody you have to consider. You want to ignore Crochet today. He's not going to play very many innings, and he's also got an unfavorable match against Houston. Manea is a GPP play today. He has a high ceiling, but a very low floor, been a little bit more inconsistent than some of the other guys. And he struggled against Miami this season, but he does have that high ceiling, which he's managed to hit a couple times already recently. His K rate is a bit inconsistent, though, so to keep that in mind. He will be relatively high owned today, though. Arrighetti for Houston is also very interesting today as a GPP play with high ceiling, safe floor, safer floor than Manea, and also has a better K rate. He's also got a good matchup against the White Sox, who are absolutely abysmal. Even though he only had 1 game against the White Sox this season where he didn't do much, but they have even less quality players right now, so I think he's in an interesting situation there. Andrew Heaney is an extreme GPP play as well for Texas against Minnesota. Now, I do like some Minnesota bats, but I do think he's got some potential to have a decent game here, and a K rate should be good enough to be capable. As for some boomer bust plays, would be Soriano and Waldron, and also Chris Criswell. He should be playing today. He was out with flu, I think is what it was, COVID-19, excuse me. So I think he'll be back today. If he's back, he is very close to Hail Mary play. As for some of the Hail Mary plays, though, we do think Grant Williams for Cleveland against Milwaukee has some potential today. As a Hail Mary play, his strikeout potential is not ideal, but he's had a decent ceiling lately, and he's got some good potential for the price point. Munez for Miami against the Mets, also kind of a Hail Mary play. He's really struggled at times, but he can score 20 fantasy points in random games, and he's actually done okay against the Mets this season. In 2 games, he's averaged 18 fantasy points a game. Out of the, I think 15 games he's played, he's given up a lot of home runs, which is a concern here, but he has managed to limit the runs against himself against the Mets directly in 2 games. So he's one of the couple teams he's actually done well against this season. So he's a Hail Mary play from that perspective. Most of the other guys like Quantrill, Mikolas, Warbowski, Savell, Woods, Richardson, and Crochet are all avoidable pitchers on this slate. So let's go ahead and get into our catchers today. So Ryan Jeffers from Minnesota is going to be in play on the slate. He's got home run potential today, so he's definitely somebody I would consider at this position. He's nice and priced cheap. He'll also be pretty high owned along with Sean Murphy. Adley Rutschman and Wilson Contreras for Baltimore and St. Louis will also be in play at this position, though they are fairly expensive. Low-owned upside guys, Francisco Alvarez, David Fry, and Will Smith. Obviously, this Colorado game with San Diego also has some massive potential today. on the slate, and it looks like it's going to be a high-scoring game. I do think Kemptsuno and Higashioka and Diaz for that in that game all have some home run potential today, but they're definitely risky. And you can only use a few guys from, if you're going to stack up one of these two teams, you can only use 5 players at the max, and I don't think I'm going to use the catcher. Uh, so I think he's in a really I think that's probably not the position to utilize the San Diego Colorado game if you want to, but it's definitely a potential uh, position. Looking at first base, Ohtani has absolutely fantastic metrics as he normally does, and he does look better than he had the last couple games, so I do like him here. Luis Arias is also in play for San Diego. Now, if you are going to stack up the Padres, then Arias is definitely one of the guys that I would consider. He's been phenomenal lately, and he's got a lot of potential. Cronenworth also does look solid, too. He is fairly expensive, though, but he does have the home run upside today. As for the ownership here, Cronenworth, Ohtani, and Arias will be the tops. JD Martinez and Freddie Freeman also have a lot of ownership here. Low owned upside guys, Matt Olson, Jokinski, Noel, Pete Alonso, and Josh Naylor. Also, small shout out to Ryan O'Hearn, who has some potential as well. Looking at second base, we do like Jake Cronenworth here as well, but Xander Bogaerts can also fit in here, though I do like Cronenworth better than Bogaerts today, as he's got more home run upside and better hitting metrics. Marcus Semien's another contrarian play that you could use here. The ownership here will be Cronenworth, Gavin Lux, Jeff McNeil, and Xander Bogaerts, with Whit Merrifield, Andres Jimenez, Kyle Farmer, and Brooks Baldwin being the low and upside guys. I think this position is a position you can cheapen, you can play down with Gavin Lux or Andre Jimenez, but I don't think it's going to be. I think a lot of guys are going to score a lot at that position. First, second, and third base oddly look like they're going to be super high scoring positions. So, and I don't think it's going to matter too much how much you pay at these positions. Looking at Machado first for the third baseman, I don't think he's my favorite play from this team, but he's definitely in play here. Ryan McMahon does have some good hitting metrics today, but he's not the best player on his slate on his team tonight. And then Royce Lewis, he's been that kind of a home run machine lately, so he's definitely somebody to consider here with really good hitting metrics. The ownership will be Machado and Ramon Urias. Low-owned upside guys, Austin Riley, Jose Ramirez, Mark Ventos, Royce Lewis, and Kiki Hernandez. Hernandez might be kind of the sneaky value play at that position that gets you enough points to pay off. Looking at shortstop, Corey Seager does jump off the page with good home run metrics today. He's been phenomenal lately and has some nice upside. Gunnar Henderson is in a solid spot as well. He's been hitting the ball very well lately, and I do like him a lot here. Same with Mookie Betts, who is back, and he's if he draws to start today, he'll be somebody I consider. He's been getting good hits in the games he started since he's been back, though he is extremely expensive. Lindor and Mookie Betts will be the top ownership guys with some value plays with low owned upside. Arcia, Brian Rosario, and Brooks Baldwin. Also, Kim from San Diego, Lindor from the Mets, Tovar from Colorado, and Pena from Houston have a lot of potential as well. Another kind of weird position today. So I think that there's a lot of ways you can do this slate. Obviously it depends on how you want to look at this San Diego, Colorado game. But I think that whether you avoid it or not, there's going to be good value at a lot of positions today. Looking at outfielders, Ohtani, Mookie Betts are the top two plays here. But I don't think we need to utilize them necessarily. We could go with Adolis Garcia for Texas. He does jump off the page as a really solid play with home run potential today. Charlie Blackmon also looks good today. I think this Colorado San Diego game's going to have a lot of potential. Blackman's overpriced, though, so do keep that in mind. Same with Jerkison Profar. He also looks phenomenal for this game, but he's extremely expensive, so he's going to be hard to roster. Looking at the other value, some value plays at this position, though, Jake Cave has some absolutely phenomenal metrics on this slate, and is priced nice and fair today. I think he's somebody I'm going to try to work in some lineups in this good matchup. Luis Robert Jr. is a one-off for the White Sox against Arrighetti. If you don't use Arrighetti or you want a one-off from the White Sox, Robert does have really good hitting metrics today. O'Hearn for Baltimore, I mentioned him at first base. He can also play here in the outfield. And Jackson Merrill, now he's a little bit overpriced. But I think he has some really good hitting metrics on the slate as well. For some contrarian plays, Marcelo Ozuna, Tommy Pham, who's actually a nice value play today, Michael Harris, Brandon Nemo, Brenton Doyle, Taylor Ward. I should mention that Brandon Nemo may not play, so to keep that in mind. David Peralta, also a very good value play, Cedric Mullins as well, and then Anthony Santander. Ownership will likely be Otani, Nemo, Jesse Winker, Jackson Merrill, Kevin Kiemeyer, and Tommy Pham, with Profar, Emmanuel Margot, David Peralta, JD Martinez, Michael Harris, and Mookie Betts also having lots of ownership. Some low-owned upside guys: Ozuna, Toscar Hernandez, Ramon Laureano, Jared Kalenic, Jokinski Noel, Luis Robert, Stephen Kwan, Will Brennan, and Harrison Bader. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave